how did you combat the fact that the character itself doesn't understand what happened before he passed away, but the player obviously has full, recognition of the events that the player has done recently? How do you combat that disconnection that exists?
What we did for that was that Torment was going to start at the point where the amnesia was no longer working. So that would then allow the player character to die and remember his memories. There was something, essentially the game was intended to explain to you that when this game starts, something is different about this incarnation that's now actually allowing you to remember things. Previous incarnations of the game figured out that someone was consciously trying to murder you as many times as possible to try and keep you forgetting stuff. And so he's found a way to combat the amnesia, and actually give you a chance to figure out who this murderer is and stop them before they keep killing you and destroying your life entirely. All right. Well, now on to the post-apocalyptic section of this. So I worked on Fallout 3 for about 5 or 6 years at Black Isle Studios. Ultimately, that project was canceled. This is not Bethesda's Fallout 3 took nothing from any of the Black Isle Studios Fallout 3. Bethesda did a very, very fine title. I played it. I enjoyed it. This solely reflects all the pre-production work that we put into Fallout 3 at Interplay and Black Isle to sort of reinvigorate the franchise. And ultimately, it all went down the drain. But I still have very fond memories about the process, and I will go over some of those elements now. So, Fallout 3. I was working on it for a very, very long time. I kept getting hauled off for various other projects, including Icewind Dale, Lionheart, and Baldur's Gate 3. And I got hauled off into Baldur's Gate 3 only to have that canceled after a year because of an accounting error. In which case the license went over to Atari and we no longer could do Baldur's Gate 3. So everyone on Baldur's Gate 3 moved over to Fallout 3 almost instantaneously. So Fallout, I started with a theme that I was very, very sick of killing foozles in role-playing games. I did not want to go after a major bad guy. I did not want to go after an evil wizard or an evil overlord. What struck me as being the worst thing for any player character or player character party to face is another adventuring party. Those guys will fuck your shit up in about 5 seconds when you meet them. We know who the movers and shakers are in a role-playing game, and it's other player character parties. Those guys are the worst. I have to admit that a lot of this came back to my desire to get back to more of a superhero style of a role-playing game. In superhero games, there's often supervillain versus superhero teams, and having the chance to actually create a team that's another player character party was a very, very interesting aspect to me. So that went into the theme for Fallout 3 in the following manner. What we did is the actual theme for Fallout 3 came to us pretty quickly. Not only did we have the idea that, hey, you know what, it would be interesting to face another party of adventurers in a post-apocalyptic environment, but it would be interesting if rather than killing them, the game would allow a series of possibilities to take place involving how you react to that other adventuring party. And while doing the research in the 50s and the Cold War era, we came across this interesting theorem called the prisoner's dilemma. Basically, most games, as they're set up, are zero-sum games in the sense that there's a clear winner and there's a clear loser. With a prisoner's dilemma, however, they take that one step further by indicating that in some cases, cooperating with your quote-unquote opponent can actually yield greater rewards for both of you in the long run. So what we wanted to do with Fallout 3 was introduce this idea of the prisoner's dilemma with the other adventuring party. Not only could they be adversaries, but under certain circumstances, it would make sense for both of you to cooperate to achieve goals, and sometimes you could achieve new and different and better goals just by cooperating with that other party of adventurers. So how do we take that theme into actual practice? Well, This really goes very old school when it comes to development process, but we actually ran Fallout 3 as 2 separate tabletop pen and paper game sessions involving 5 or 6 people on the actual development team. There were 2 different parties and 2 different sets of developers in each team. And we set up a whole series of turn-based rules for Fallout 3, and we also used it as a testing ground to try out all these new systems, powers, races, and we were actually able to get immediate feedback from the player characters while we were doing the actual pen and paper session. And this goes back to my theory that one of the best ways to be a designer in the game industry is having to subject yourself to being a game master with Dungeons & Dragons or some other role-playing game where you get immediate feedback from the 5 or 6 or even more players sitting at the table around you. They will immediately tell you what they don't like about an adventure. They will immediately tell you when their character isn't having fun. And because your job is to entertain all those people at once, that really builds a lot of the game mastering skills that actually I was able to translate into the actual development process when it came to computer games. Except this time your audience of players is about 10,000 people, and you have to make sure that all those people are having fun at all times, no matter what character creation choices they made. And you have to cater to all their different classes and their abilities, and again, your mission is to make sure that each and every one of those people has fun. Fallout 3 allowed us to do this because Fallout 3 was intended initially to be a turn-based game, and that's the kind of games that you can run in a pen and paper session where everyone is taking their turn to the table to actually do their actions and spend their action points. Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 were very turn-based, and so that format lent itself to being able to run these pen and paper tabletop sessions. We did a great deal of sort of rule book documents. We call this sort of the Fallout 2 2D concept. We had a lot of basic stuff you'd find in a Dungeons & Dragons game. We listed out all the new traits and powers and skills they want to introduce for Fallout 3. And we actually gave all those options to the players to have them actually build their own characters for how they wanted to interact with the environment. Also, a lot of the combat elements of Fallout were actually able to be translated into pen and paper games very easily. We were able to dissect all the critical hit charts that took place in Fallout and actually reduce those into a pen and paper game format. And interestingly enough, when we actually did that and dissected all the critical hit tables in Fallout 1 and 2, we actually found a lot of errors in exactly how critical hits were done in both those games. So among the many successes that we had with this, we were actually able to fix some of the data tables that resulted from that, so that was good. Also, we were able to introduce different types of new items for the player characters to use as weapons. For Fallout 3, it was very much our intention to actually have super mutants and ghouls, which were NPC races in the first 2 games, actually have those be player character options in Fallout 3. And as such, having those characters allowed you to choose new traits for them, new abilities. And one of the things is this, because the super mutants are so strong, there's certain weapons they can use that no other class can use easily, such as picking up big fucking girders and hammering people with them. So paper gaming, the 2 sessions went very, very well. The way we had it set up was both pen and paper sessions took place in the same world. And what we would do is after each session is I would track all the consequences and repercussions that took place after each session and determine how it would affect the other player character party. At first, the two different sessions didn't know that the 2 sessions were sharing the same game world. So it added a new element of mystery where one player character group was trying to figure out what was happening in all these other sections of the world, not realizing that it was the other player character party at first. And then once they caught on, the dynamic got very, very interesting. As one specific example, one player character party hit a slaver camp first before the other one did. And because there were so many slavers, the slavers actually chased that party out of the camp and out of the area. So when the second player character party showed up later on, they encountered only 5 or 6 slavers at the camp, murdered them all, took all the slavers' loot, and then set all the captives free, and they were able to escape while the whole slaver tribe was off chasing the other player character group. And that was exactly the kind of feel and consequences that we wanted to create for Fallout 3 in terms of situations. So we played about 30 or 40 sessions. It helped also play test for his new perks and abilities when it introduced in the game. And The nice thing about Fallout 2 is having 12 different players